Howdy y'all, and welcome to Gun Safety for Dummies. There are plenty of videos like this out there, but hopefully after watching you'll be educated enough to not hurt yourself the next time you touch a firearm. Sure, this kind of content can be boring, but consider this. Here we have a person. Other than being a stock image, this guy we'll call Careful Chris. Chris knows a lot about the safe use of guns. Chris is a swell guy. Now we'll call this other guy Dangerous Dan. Dan here knows very little about guns, and as far as he's concerned, the first rule of gun safety is to always have fun. And, well, Dan just basically broke every rule of gun safety and just shot Chris. Well, now Dan can look forward to everything from criminal charges to civil suits, and will have to live out the rest of his life knowing that he shot an innocent man. Don't worry though, Chris got better, and hopefully Dan learned his lesson. Section 1. Firearm Basics and Operation. There are two broad categories of firearms: long guns, including rifles and shotguns, and handguns, including pistols and revolvers. Of course, there's a lot more to it once you get into the nuance, but that kind of detail is not what this video is about. However, I will cover a few things once we get to the live-action demonstration part of the video. Section 2. Rules of Gun Safety. The most common set of gun safety rules you will hear were developed by the late Jeff Cooper of the United States Marine Corps. To summarize them succinctly, the first rule is that you should always treat every firearm as if it is loaded. Dan broke that rule from the get-go, and I'm sure he never even realized his gun was loaded at all. The second rule is that you should never point a firearm, loaded or not, at anything you do not intend to destroy. And as for Dan, yeah. The third rule is to always keep your finger off the trigger until you intend to shoot, colloquially expressed as keep the booger hook off the bang switch. Although it's the third rule, it's the most important, since guns don't fire themselves, and even if you manage to violate every other rule of gun safety, you can't accidentally shoot someone if you don't actually fire the weapon. The last rule is to always be aware of your target and everything behind it, and around it too. After all, you are responsible for each and every bullet that goes down range. And in Dan's case, well, I don't think he was aware of anything, least of all where he was aiming. Remember, you can never be too careful, but you can easily be too careless. Section 3. Common jams and failures, and how to fix them. Thanks to the power of MS Paint tier artwork, we can illustrate some types of mechanical failures without putting ourselves at risk by actually trying to replicate them. First is what's called a failure to extract. This can be caused by operator error or a malfunctioning weapon, and results in a fresh round getting lodged in the chamber behind one that failed to be extracted after firing. To fix this, remove the magazine, which may take some force to do, then rack the slide until the obstructions have been removed from the chamber. Next is a failure to eject or stovepipe jam. This one is fairly common and minor and is when a fired round, well, fails to eject. All you have to do to correct this is to turn the weapon to the side and rack the slide until the casing falls out. Now, one of the rarer but highly dangerous types of failure is called a squib. This occurs when the round is fired but doesn't make it out of the barrel, usually due to insufficient, or no, gunpowder in the cartridge. If you fire another round into the first one, you are very likely to cause a burst, which has high potential to cause serious injury. The easiest way to tell if this happened is that the gunshot will be much quieter, there will be little recoil, and smoke will usually vent out of the chamber instead of the barrel. If this occurs, unload the weapon immediately and do not use it again until it is fixed. Usually the stuck round can be removed by knocking it out with a dowel or such, and may require you to disassemble the firearm. If you cannot fix it or are unsure of how to do so, contact a range safety officer or gunsmith. However, this type of malfunction is very, very rare if you are using factory ammunition, but do be aware that it exists and is possible. Similar to a squib is a hang fire, which is when the round is ignited but does not go off immediately. If you pull the trigger and don't hear a bang, always keep the firearm pointed downrange for at least a full minute, in case it goes off with a delay. And also like a squib, this type of failure is also very rare if you are using good quality ammunition. The most important takeaway from all this is that if you're not sure what is going on or what you should do, Always set the weapon down, pointing in a safe direction, unload it if possible, and ask a qualified safety officer or gunsmith for assistance. Section 4. Range Safety. There are both indoor and outdoor ranges out there, so let's cover both types. Both are generally the same, but some things can work differently between them. First, we have Randy's Indoor Gun Range. In indoor ranges, you usually place your target on a moving holder, which goes up and down a track, so you can retrieve and replace it when you want. The rules are mostly intuitive and hold true for most, if not all, ranges you can go to. Only load and handle firearms at the designated benches and lanes, and unload them before you leave. Never point firearms, loaded or not, at any other lane or person. Don't shoot anything outside your lane, and that includes other people's targets, the walls, ceiling, and floor. You will be held responsible for the damage. Some ranges have restrictions like caliber, ammo type, or rapid fire. If you are renting a firearm, you will typically have to buy and use their ammo as well. Now let's move on over to Dandy's Great Outdoor Range. It's like an indoor range in many ways, but with its own quirks. For one, there are usually no target tracks, so you will have to wait for a safety officer to call for a ceasefire before you can go retrieve and place targets. Like in an indoor range, do not load or handle firearms outside designated areas. When a ceasefire is called, unload and lay your weapons down. Never go past the firing line unless there is a ceasefire in effect. You can always ask the safety officer for one if you need to retrieve something. Some outdoor ranges don't have barriers between lanes, so be mindful of hot brass and shells ejected by other people's weapons. You must be extra careful in outdoor ranges to not aim too high, because then your round could possibly go over the backstop and somewhere you don't want it, although a properly built range will limit this possibility. Regardless of what type of range you're at, remember that the range safety officer always has the final say. If they tell you to do something, or not do something, you must obey, or else you risk getting ejected from the range and or a ban. In addition to what I've said, each range can and will have their own extra rules, and of course you are expected to follow them as well. And of course, if you see something dangerous, tell someone immediately. Section 5. Live Demonstrations. When transporting a firearm between your home, the range, a shop, or wherever, it is a good idea to use a case like this one. Oh look, how nice. And it's also recommended you keep weapons unloaded and magazines separate for extra safety. Now let's take a look at what we have here. This is a Springfield XD in 9mm. What, you think my choice illustrations were at random? Anyhow, let's take a look at its safety features, which many newer handguns also offer. For this demo, I am using inert snap caps, which are a great tool to practice handling guns without the risk of actually shooting someone or something. Just don't mix them with live ammo. You can tell if this pistol is ready to fire with this firing pin indicator and its loaded chamber indicator. It has a grip safety and a trigger safety, and it cannot fire unless both are depressed. Notice that some models like this one do not have a manual safety, which would normally be here, so you should exercise extra caution with them. Unfortunately, I don't have any revolvers to demonstrate, so I went with the time-honored tradition of bumming off a friend for pictures. There are two things I want to point out with them. First is that you should not cowboy or flick the cylinder closed, despite how often you see it in movies and video games. It will only lead to an expensive repair bill. Second is that you should always keep your hands away from the front of the cylinder when firing, especially with larger caliber revolvers. This is because hot gases can and will eject from there in normal operation, and the end result can be very painful if you forget. This is an AR-15, just one of many. It's totally airsoft, guys, trust me. It has a manual safety on the other side. The higher end ones have an ambidextrous safety lever on both sides. Not me though, I'm too poor for that. Unlike the XD you saw before, it has neither a grip nor a trigger safety, but it doesn't really need either. Remember, The best safety is the one between your eyes, paired with your Mark I eyeballs. This is an old Type 38 rifle. It's far too big to fit on the screen. A bolt-action rifle like this loads either from loose rounds or from stripper clips, which I don't have, into its internal magazine. This is going to be the most dangerous thing I do all week. It has a palm safety on the bolt, and that's really all you need. Simple. This is a Stuger, whatever, an over-under shotgun. Like the Type 38, it's also far too big for the camera. It's also wicked simple to operate. Just pull the lever to break the action, and load it up. Like other such shotguns, it has a manual safety that you need to flick each time you close it up before you can shoot. It's also really hard to jam. Although it's mechanically simple, the recoil of 12-gauge shells is often too much for new shooters to handle, so it's not recommended to start them on such a weapon. Now I will demonstrate two common types of malfunctions and how to fix them. The first is a double feed, like shown in the illustrations. When this happens, remove the magazine and rack the slide. Eject the round. That's all there is to it. Second is the failure to eject or stovepipe jam. When this happens, simply turn the firearm to the side and rack the slide, which should clear the jam. You can also tap the bottom of your magazine to make sure it's seated properly to avoid further jams like this. When there are children in the house, consider using gun locks and gun case locks, and also consider buying a gun safe to store them in. One other important way to enhance safety is to also teach your children about gun safety and why firearms are not toys. There are plenty of resources available online or from reputable instructors about how to approach this. One more thing to consider is that many firearms, including these, are capable of firing even without a magazine loaded. Thus, you should always inspect the chamber to make sure it is empty, and be sure to remove the magazine before you rack the slide or bolt to clear it. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully you found this enlightening, if not entertaining. Remember, what I talked about is just several of many topics on gun safety, and you are always welcome and encouraged to learn more from all the other sources that are available. If nothing else, just remember that only you can prevent gun-related accidents.